Can you pick the new link up off Twitter?
Yeah, you sent me the link, yeah. No, I'm on Twitter. I haven't got your login for Twitter.
Right, how can I get? What's the best way to get it to you?
Just text it or email to me, whatever's easiest for you.
Email.
Are you actually live?
Yeah.
Are you talking now?
Yeah.
Oh my God. You should stop talking, probably.
Okay, I'm going to you now. Like 10 people found it. Hi everybody, I'm just trying to sort out how other people can find this link.
If it's on your Twitter, I'll just get it off that. Okay, bye.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here now.
Okay, bye. Okay.
Thanks, bye. Hi, I'm so sorry. The computer turned itself off, which closed the feed down. So I'm back here now, and I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes to see if other people find it. I've just posted the link on Twitter, and we're here to talk about Cosmic, and the numbers are going up already, so that's good. And my clever daughter is going to put a link on Instagram. Welcome to my office. This is it. This is where it all gets written. Should we play some music while we wait? I'll play some space music while we're waiting. Apparently that's not the link. Right, so I didn't even put the right link up. I'm sorry about this, everybody. I'm trying to get the right link out there. That was the wrong link. No, I've just deleted the right link. Okay, so there's some of you here. I am so sorry about this. I'm not that bad technically. It's that I used quite a shonky old computer, and as we got live, it just restarted itself for some reason, and that meant that the link was dead. The old link was dead. But anyway, some of you are here now. We're here to talk about Cosmigo, which is the I think the Spanish version, or it could be called Gojmit, which is, I think, Polish, or Man. I think that's the Dutch version, which is relevant in a minute. This beautiful Korean version, and there's Cosmic. So lots and lots of different versions of Cosmic from around the world. I'm slightly anxious that people are still joining, and I don't want anyone to miss out. So, because last week I told you the story of Liam's first day at big school, I thought I would tell you the horrific story of my first day at school. This is the story of my first day at school. This is what happened to me on my first day at school, okay? I was the oldest in my family. We lived in a little flat on Stanley Road in the middle of Liverpool, and I went to school just opposite. But I was very, very anxious starting school because I didn't know anyone who'd started school before and didn't know what was going on. I think, here's what really made me anxious, that my mum thought it would be a really good idea if when I started school, I wore a little bow tie. She thought this would show how well brought up I was and how neat and smart. And she said everybody would want one. And the minute I walked onto the school playground, every single head on the school playground went, oof. Kid in a bow tie. And I knew along, but there's one deer at the back who's not very good at being a deer, and you can see the wolves going. And that's what I thought all the other kids in the playground were, hungry wolves looking at this weak little boy in a bow tie. So I knew playtime was going to be a problem. And worse than that, I also discovered at that moment, and this is relevant to what we're talking about later, at that moment I suddenly thought, my mum is wrong about life. She's wrong. People don't love little boys in bow ties. People in this playground despise little boys in bow ties, and I'm going to be in some terrible trouble. So I thought then, I know, I'm not going to go into this school. I'm just not going to have it. I'm not going to school. And the other thing I was worried about is these. Can you see this? This is a Dalek. If you don't know what Daleks are, I'd just seen Daleks for the very first time, and I was absolutely terrified of Daleks. I just thought they were real, and I was really worried about them. So that was another reason that I didn't want to go to school, is that I was worried that in the playground there might be Daleks, or Daleks might just appear in school. So I was very anxious about Daleks. I was very anxious about my bow tie. I'd sort of decided, basically, I'm not going to school. So all the time that my mum was pushing me towards the classroom, I was pushing back the other way, going, no, 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 I'm not going in there. Then the door of my class, this is a true story, right? Worried about Daleks, the door of my classroom opened, and my lovely teacher came out to meet me and to encourage me to come into my class, to her class. Very tender, very kind. She could see that I was worried. She didn't know I was worried about Daleks, but she could see that I was worried. And so she came towards me with her arms out, and my teacher was a nun. So she looked a bit like this. Can you see this? She's got a veil over her head, right? Can you see where this story's going? She had a kind of dome-shaped head because she had this veil over her head. So she came at me. She came at me like this, with her arms out. Come on, come to me. And I thought, whoa, that's not a teacher. Mum, that's not a teacher, you fool. That is a little blue Irish Dalek. And so on my first day at school, I did this thing that is the worst thing that anyone ever did on a first day at school. It's probably the worst thing anybody's ever done anywhere. On my first day at school, I kicked a nun. And I thought I was being good. I thought I was saving the world from a terrible danger. So I was going like, I don't mean I kicked, like, I just really kicked a lot. I was like, I'll save you. Get back, everybody. It's a Dalek. And yeah, I kicked a nun on my first day at school. Right, so that's my story. The numbers look like they're stabilizing, so let's get going. We've got a lot of great shout outs. We've got, as ever, some fantastic questions. And I also said, does anyone have a request for a bit of Cosmic or Nardamon to read out? And the lovely Mr. Burnell, who is from, I've forgotten what school you're from, Mr. Burnell, but you're great. And he's already reading Cosmic Online himself. He's from Fishergate. He suggested that I read the chapter about the Vomit Comet, which is a bit late in the book. And I'm a bit worried about spoilers today, because I know that some of you have only just started the book. But this isn't really a spoiler. You know that I've picked two passages. They're both from quite late in the book, but neither of them is a spoiler. This is from when they're training, and they have their first experience of zero gravity. So sit back, and I'll read you the bit about the Vomit Comet. Then we'll do some shout outs, and I'll answer some questions, and then I'll set you a creative writing challenge, because this is not just a Cosmic class, this is a creative writing class too. So I'm going to read you a bit, shout outs, questions, creative writing challenge, and then for the grand finale, I will read you something else. Okay, thank you all for your patience, and here we go. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin. So they do all these sort of training for space, and one of the things they've got to do is experience zero gravity, which you can do in a special plane. It looks like an ordinary plane, said Dr. Drax, not too different from the kind of plane that takes you on holiday, except it doesn't have any windows, and you won't be going on holiday. It's taking you on a parabola. Quite a few parabolas, as it happens. Does anyone know why? Samson's hand shot up. Zero gravity? Oh, Samson too, aren't you clever? Said Dr. Drax. In fact, said his dad, he's officially a genius. Today, said Dr. Drax, we're all going to have a little taste of how it feels to be weightless. Are we excited? We were excited. Do we have any more questions? Can we have a packet of crisps? Said Hassan. Hassan, said Dr. Drax, this plane is officially referred to as the Draxcom Zero Star, but it also has a more popular name, a name that's a little bit more informative, and that name is the Vomit Comet. That's the real name, by the way. They use this kind of plane at NASA to train people, and that's what it's really called. It's called the Vomit Comet. Oh, because people throw up on it. Ah, so no crisps. No crisps. The outside of the Vomit Comet might look like an ordinary plane, but inside it does not look like an ordinary plane. There's only one seat, a long bench with lap belts. The walls are completely covered with giant white cushions. There is nothing else in there but a big empty space. You could think of it, said Dr. Drax, as a giant soft play area flying through the air. There, that's a nice cuddly thought, isn't it? Sick bags are under the seats. Good luck, everybody. And while we were strapping ourselves in, Florida whispered, what does it mean, weightless? Are we going to lose weight? Sort of, I said. I started trying to explain about gravity, but then the engines started up and we were taking off. And I don't mean like a normal takeoff. The comet seemed to be heading straight into the air for ages. We had to hold onto the bench so we wouldn't slip off. And the ringing in our ears was so loud, we thought we'd never hear anything else again. I felt like my head was going to explode. It was not enjoyable. Everyone else was trying to think about what was going to happen, which wasn't easy because Samson too was trying to impress Florida by describing the whole thing, how we were going to climb to some amazing height and then dive faster than we would if we fell and we were shot down. Max said, Dad, tell him to stop talking. Monsieur Martinet looked at him sternly and said, Max, there is no point trying to hide from fear. Fear will find you. You have to look fear in the eye, say hello to fear and keep walking by. Remember, fear is the enemy of courage. Yes, shouted Samson too. You must understand that you feel more fear than normal, partly because of the unusual amount of gravity acting on your pituitary gland, which is being squeezed and is therefore pumping out more adrenaline than usual. You should enjoy it. Max started, Max, snapped his dad. I insist you enjoy it. Let me off, shouted Hassan. You know, said Eddie Xanadu, NASA does rides like this in America. Only they cost £2,000 each time. Don't think of it as a scary experience. Think of it as a bargain. Florida was gripping my arm, but I didn't feel too bad. The higher we climbed, the more my ears hurt, and the more I thought, I'd had this feeling before somewhere. Then I remembered where. I turned to Florida and said, this is like the log flume. What? It's just a big, big log flume. Oh, so you should be shouting, shouldn't you? This is like the log flume. You remember how it takes you ages to chuck up to the top of the ride and then you roll over the top and, oh yes, said Florida. And she relaxed her grip a bit. It's just a 20,000-foot log flume. The only difference is we won't get wet. She grinned at me. Thinking of it as a log flume made it feel different. Suddenly, the feeling in our ears was not just horrible air pressure. It was excitement, filling up inside our heads like a balloon. A voice over the tannoy said, we are now approaching the crest of the curve. Please unfasten your safety belts for the zero-gravity interlude. This is it, said Florida. And she let go of me completely. She put her arms in the air and screamed like you do on the log flume. Unlike Mr. Martinet, who grabbed my other arm even tighter. I remind you, said the tannoy, that your sick bags are under your seats. Mr. Martinet did not let go. He hadn't undone his seatbelt and he didn't go for his sick bag. He was just sitting there, breathing deeply, with his eyes shut, gripping my arm. I tried to prise his fingers off me, and then it happened. I stood up, pulling myself out of Mr. Martinet's grip. I tried to walk. The first step was longer than I expected. The second was longer than that. And on the third, I just took off. For a whole second, I was flying head first down the plane like Superman, but my feet kept going upwards, so I ended up doing the first double somersault I'd ever done in my whole life. I said, woohoo, or something like that. And when I came up, I was facing Florida. She jabbed at me and shouted, Tig! And the jab sent me spinning back the other way. And when I came up this time, I was facing Samson too. Before I could even think about it, I tigged him. And he looked completely surprised and confused, like no one had ever tigged him before. I tried to swim off. That's what it felt like, swimming in the air. But suddenly it was all over. One of my feet touched the floor. And before I knew it, everyone was standing up again, except Mr. Martinet, who was still strapped to his seat. Florida was whinging. Why is it called the vomit comet? No one was sick. She sounded like she thought I should do something about this. Then the voice came from the tannoy again and said, that was the first parabola. Please prepare for your second parabola. There's more, said Mr. Martinet and grabbed my arm again. And so it all happened again. The plane climbed. Our ears hurt. Hassan said he wanted to get off. And then we all started floating again. Someone thumped me on the back and sent somersaulting down the plane. And when my head came up, I could see Samson too grinning at me and shouting, Tig to you too. And he put his thumb up. And suddenly a voice yelled, stop! And there was Mr. Martinet, still in his lap belt, but a bit floaty, like a balloon on a string. The pilot has lost control, he screamed. This is an emergency. We need help. We need help. We need help. We need... And then his words stopped, and a ball of puke slipped out of his mouth and drifted off down the plane like a tiny green planet. Look, yelled Florida, pointing at it, as if the ball of puke was the most exciting thing in the whole world. She got herself in front of it, opened her sick bag, and let the vomit planet drift inside. Back of the net, she yelled. And when we were all back on the floor again, Florida showed me the sick bag proudly and said, I got it. I got it. I know. Do you want to see? Not really. She also tried to show it to Dr. Drax when she landed. I did try to discourage this. Florida, I said, I'm sure Dr. Drax doesn't want to see a ball of puke. Oh, but I do, said Dr. Drax. I was watching the monitors, and I have to say, Florida, the coordination and agility that you showed when you caught Mr. Martinet's little accident was very impressive. You have the makings of an excellent astronaut, taikonaut. That was great. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Hope you heard that. Hope it was all good. We're going to move on to our shout-outs. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Burnell, for suggesting that. I really enjoyed reading it. I don't think I've read it since the book was published, so that was great to read that again. Chevening School have got a question Achieving School in Sevenoaks have got a question that is going to make the rest of you unhappy when I answer it. So I'm going to leave that. We've got our first shout out today. This is quite exciting. Is to a school in the Netherlands. This is class 1D ID4B at HSV School in the Netherlands. Fantastic that you're tuning in. They are reading The Broccoli Boy, and straight after this, I'm going to record a chapter of me reading it for them, and that won't go wrong. We've got a shout out to Nethersoul, who wants another shout out. They got a shout out last week, but they want another one now. The fabulous Year 5 children and their awesome parents at Christchurch Primary School in Morton on the Wirral. I'd like to imagine myself hearing you cheering when you say it, when I say your name. So when I say your name, give yourselves a cheer. Little shout out to Isis Marquis, who's watching this. I think she's on her own at school. She's working so hard. Great girl. Isis, give yourself a cheer. Alex and Ben in West Kirby, who loved it last week and bought a copy. That's good news for me. Shout out to St. Paul's Catholic Primary School. Give yourselves a cheer. Please say hello to my Year 5 class from Valley Gardens Middle, who have just read Baba Yaga's Daughter from my favourite old book, this one, by Joan Aiken. I'm really pleased that you read that, and I hope you really enjoyed it. And they're near Wallsend, which is one of my favourite places. Louis at St. Columba's Primary, give yourself a cheer if you're reading this. Jake, Chloe, and Tom at Southwold. Oh, Jake, Tom, and Southwold did this amazing work this week, and Miss Wright and Mr. Marshall's socks were blown off, which is a bit of a smelly type of accident. And since we're talking about socks, can we talk about Mr. Fisher, who is wearing special cosmic socks today for this session? How amazing is that? Nethersoul Primary would like another shout out. So there's another shout out for Nethersoul Primary. Year 5 at Wilfred Owen School in Shrewsbury would like a shout out. There you go. Give yourselves a cheer. Nethersoul wants another shout out. There's another one for Nethersoul. And Ilford and Kingston Primary, Oak class, Mrs. Kerrigan and Mrs. Peck would love a shout out. And they're getting the biggest shout out because that shout out was requested for them by a woman called Sarah Dudman, who was the editor of this book, Cosmic. Nethersoul again, there you go. Pearl's class at Burriton Primary for Mrs. Evans, great stuff. And George from class 5 at Primary French Community Primary, and Tanner and Pocklington. And now we're going to do some questions, starting with the bad question. If you were watching last week, you will know that someone asked me a question: would I prefer an extra arm or an extra head? And I fondly remembered when you asked me that question that I had worked on a children's TV series long ago when your parents were children called Captain Star, and there was a character in that who had 9 heads and 6 arms, and we wrote a song about him. So I said I would sing that song next week if anyone reminded me, and sadly Chevening Primary at Sevenoaks reminded me, so now I have to sing the song. I'm mortified about this. I'm so glad I'm not in front of you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up a picture of the drawing of the character. The character was called Limbs Jones, and he was the stoker of an atomic engine. My granddad was a stoker on a ship, which means you shovel coal into the engine. So he was a stoker on a rocket, and he had to shovel radioactive fuel into the rocket. This is crazy, isn't it? This is my life. So here he is. He had 9 heads and 6 arms. My bright red, I'm going to hold this up. I'm going to sing you this song. It's supposed to be like a sea shanty. Oh, I hate you, Chevening. Never ever ask me to come to school. I never. Okay, here we go. Oh, I was in a terrible accident in a great big atomic furnace. Ooh, they thought for certain that I was dead, but I came out with a multiplied head. 9 heads in all. I had 2 arms when I went in there, 1 on the left and 1 on the right. When I came out, I had 4 more, a total of 6 if you're keeping score. 6 arms in all. There you go. Right, you can all hate on Chevening School for that now. Have we got any proper good questions? This is what we want to know. After these questions, I'm going to set you a task. and I hope you're going to like it. But where are the questions gone, Frank? Oh, not another technical problem, because there were some excellent questions today. Let me find them. Here they are. I do have them, don't worry. It's my fingers that are technically not working. Mr. Tight's class. Mr. Tight is one of the greatest teachers on earth, and his class are very lucky to have him. He really keeps on top of everything, and he knows what's going on. And he asked me how to make dialogue realistic. I'm very pleased that you think my dialogue is realistic. And the answer is, read it out. Does it feel all right in your mouth? And that's the answer to everything to do with writing. And we're going to, part of today is a creative writing class. So one thing I'm going to really hammer home is that when you've done any writing, find someone that you love or trust and read it out to them, because that's a great way of finding out whether it's any good or not. So reading it out is the answer to that. There's a question here from Netherstall Primary who said, can you give us a shout out? Yes, Netherstall Primary, there's another shout out for you. Blackmore Park sent some great questions. I'm going to start with this one. So Our Lady of the Annunciation Primary School in Glasgow, which I think is Mr. Fisher in his, remember something wonderful. If you could travel, that NASA, the American Space Agency, produced posters as though you could go on holiday to space, and you should look them up. And maybe that's kind of good little creative task for you, might be to write a holiday advert for somewhere else in our solar system. So this is for an exoplanet called Kepler 16b. This is the advert, and it says, it's got a slogan. It says, "Where your shadow always has company," because it's a planet that belongs to a double star, so you would have two shadows. Isn't that wonderful? And there are lots and lots of them, and you should look them up and maybe give you ideas for adverts for other planets. But this is my favourites because I recognise this planet. I've been here. Earth, your oasis in space, where the air is free and the gravity is very good. Okay, so that was a great question. It made me remember those lovely things. Then St. Mary's Ladcliffe asked if I would enjoy going to space. I certainly, absolutely would. I still am hoping that one day I will get called up and asked if I would join a space mission. That's my thing. I would love to go to space. Max, also at Blackmore Park, this is very fortuitous, said, where do you write your stories? And I write them here. This is my office. Look, this is it. A few books. There's The Runaway Robot up there. There are my film posters. There's some inspiring pictures on the wall. It's very, very, do you want to see how messy it is? Look at this. It looks all right there, doesn't it? But if I do that, it's horrendous. It's a messy, messy, messy office. So this is where I write my stories. And another one from Our Lady of the Annunciation is, where's it gone? Luca. So that was the question from Max. And this one is from Luca, who says, are most of your characters from real life? It might be from Isabella, that question. And that was interesting as well, because, well, I talked to you last week about how the inspiration for Liam and his big growing spurts was a real friend of my son's who had one of these big growing spurts. But there is actually a real person in that book, in Cosmic, and that real person is Mr. Alan Bean, who died last year, who was the fourth person to walk on the moon. And he was incredibly helpful with this book, and he was a real, real gentleman. This is how much of a gentleman Alan Bean was. Do you know how you go to the toilet in a spacesuit? You're wearing a big old spacesuit, it's full of little wires and tubes and stuff. So if you need to go to the toilet, you just go, and it goes into a little bag. But when he was on the moon, he was so polite that if he needed a wee, he would still go behind a rock, even though it took ages to get there because it's so hard to walk. And Alan broke his camera when he was on the moon. Can you imagine that? He'd been to the moon, he had no photos of himself. So when he retired, which was a long time afterwards, he was a really great astronaut. He flew the space shuttle for ages. He painted these pictures. He painted pictures endlessly and used the moon dust off his spacesuits to make the pictures more realistic. So this is one of Alan Bean's paintings. What an amazing, amazing person and a great artist, as you can see. Okay, so I think that's all the questions and all the shouts. Oh no, somebody asked me who was it? I don't know. I'm really sorry about this. I can't remember who it was, but someone asked me if we'd make a film of Cosmic. I'm working on a film of Cosmic, low key. Don't tell anyone, but I'm going to show you. These are the designs for the spacesuits. These are some of the designs for the spacesuits. So you ain't seen these, right? But there you go. Directed by a really great Hungarian director called Christoph, who won an Oscar a couple of years ago. Right. So I promised to set you a writing task, a creative writing task. And in the end, Cosmic is about a lot of things. It's about growing up, and it's about space, it's about friendship, it's about what it is to be a dad. But one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is that it's about growing up. Because lots of the heroes of children's books don't grow up. So I loved Just William when I was little, but Just William stayed 10 years old from about 1930 to about 1968. He just never aged a day in all that time. And if you think about Paddington, Paddington doesn't get any older. If he did, that would be horrifying. Imagine that. That might be something worth writing. Paddington bear grown up, a huge grizzly bear with massive claws, making all the same usual Paddington mistakes in the kitchen. There would be blood everywhere and destruction and chaos. So Paddington doesn't grow up. But some characters do grow up, don't they? Like, if you know Anne of Green Gables, there's like 30 Anne of Green Gables books that go from when she first meets the family till when she's a mum herself, or when she's running a school with lots of children in it. But Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter book, Harry's a little boy who just loves Bertie Bott's beans and friendship and making new friends and starting school. And nothing really goes wrong. I mean, things do go wrong. There's a troll in the toilets, but there's always someone there to sort it out. There are teachers there that you can trust, teachers that you don't trust, but there are teachers. There's Dumbledore to look after him. And by the time you get to book 7, no spoilers, he's on his own and he has to deal with his problems himself. So I was thinking today about Cosmic and all the moments in Cosmic. Cosmic is really about growing up because Liam is pretending that he is a grown-up. So he's finding out what it means to be a grown-up and how he wishes he was still a child in some ways. You know, the responsibility of being a grown-up and the boringness of being a grown-up and having to talk to other grown-ups, all those things. And Liam, and if you think about it, you don't grow up smoothly. You grow up in moments when you have to make a decision. So if you think of the moments when Liam's at assembly and just decides to pretend to be a grown-up, or if you think of the moment that I'm going to finish with, I'm going to read another section where Liam has to make a decision to be brave. So for your writing challenge, what about writing something about imagining yourself as a grown-up and maybe imagining yourself having to make a difficult decision as a grown-up? Because drama and great stories, they tend to revolve around decisions, the big decisions that you make. Think of Charlie at the beginning of Charlie at the Chocolate Factory thinking, can I just buy one more bar of chocolate for myself before going home? Or all those decisions that you have to make. So I would like you to imagine yourself as a grown-up having to make a decision and having to step up to the plate. Because we're in quite difficult times and lots of people are having to make difficult decisions, sometimes about quite small things, whether to go to the shops or not, whether to see a friend or not, whether to give someone a hug or not. Decisions are what make you a grown-up. So think about decisions and think about imagining yourself grown up or even really old. Okay, so that's a lot. Now, that's a lot to think about. So, right, oh, and here's the other thing, right? I would like you to write that story in a specific amount of time. I would like you to give yourself 15 minutes, not think about anything, just get your head down, write it. Doesn't matter how messy it is, doesn't have to have a beginning with middle of an end, just pour it out. Don't worry about the spelling, don't worry about the neatness, don't worry about the structure, don't plan it. Just sit down, imagine yourself a grown-up for 15 minutes, because there's lots of different ways to write, but here's a magical thing that happens. People always ask writers where ideas come from. And one place that ideas come from is other ideas. When you start writing, other ideas just come. Because like one little idea, like what will it be like when I'm a grown-up? Will we all be wearing spacesuits and we'll be floating around with jetpacks or what? Once you think about that one little idea, other ideas just come. Because ideas are magnetic. They attract other ideas, and ideas want to dance. When you've got one idea, it's looking for someone to dance with. And so the minute you start writing, I promise you, you will have other ideas, and that feels like magic. And I want you to have that feeling. So give yourself 15 minutes, sit down, write something. And if you do write something great, let me know on Twitter or on Instagram or whatever. Your teachers will do it for you. Right, I'm going to finish by reading you another section, and I'm very worried about spoilers. And this section comes from towards the end of the book. So I'm slightly worried that it might be a bit of a spoiler, but it's not a spoiler really. It's like one kind of incident, and it's set in space, and you all know that he's going to end up in space. Oh, have I spoiled it? I don't know. He is going to end up in space. Okay, it's on the front. It's on the front cover. Okay, and he has to do something brave. He has to make a decision. I won't tell you why, because that might be a spoiler, but there comes a point at which Liam has to go outside the rocket. And when you go outside the rocket, that's when you have to put on the big spacesuit. That's when you see the Earth. That's when you're completely weightless, and that's an amazing, amazing thing. Every astronaut who's ever done that talks about how astonishing it is. And the very first astronaut who ever spacewalked, they had to sort of drag him back in. He didn't want to come back in because he was so hypnotized by the beauty of the planet that you live on and how just absolutely dazzlingly beautiful our planet is. So he just wanted to stay and look at it, and his oxygen was running out, and his teammates had to sort of more or less pull him back in. It was very, very dangerous. So I'm going to read you this, and this is going to be the ending of this session. So before I do, next week we'll do something similar. Next week is, I think, storytelling week. So next week, I think I'm going to do a session like this, but I'm going to tell you a story. I'm not going to read you a story. I'm going to tell you a story, because someone today asked me a question about where ideas come from, and one place that ideas come from is other people's ideas. So I'm going to tell you the story of where I got the idea for my book, Millions, which is a book about two little boys who find a bag full of money. So that's the announcement. So next week I'll do something like this, and you can leave messages for me about if there's anything else you'd like me to do. But for now, I'm signing off with this section from Cosmic. Going outside a rocket is called an EVA, the extravehicular activity. Sadly, I missed the part of the training where we did that because of Eddie Danadu's electric Ribena. The others remembered the important things: how to put your helmet on, how to connect your oxygen, how to check the EVA suit. There was a section in the manual about how to open the airlock on the rocket, and suddenly there I was, ready to go into space. I was standing inside the airlock, and Florida was pointing to a coiled yellow rope. "That's the safety harness," she said. "It ties you to the rocket so you don't just drift off. Put it on straight away. You're dead without that." I fastened myself into the safety harness. Florida sealed the inside door behind me, and for a moment I was bobbing by myself inside the airlock. It was like standing in a lift. It seemed so ordinary, apart from the fact that I was slightly levitating. I started to think Samson 2 might be right. Maybe we weren't in space. Maybe this was just some kind of simulation. Then the external door started to open. There was a slant of black so solid that it looked like a wall. It was hard to believe that things could move around inside it. Then I started to see the underside of the Dandelion's silver sails. I'm saying that's what it was, but it was hard to tell because it was so dazzling at first that you couldn't really make out the shape. It blazed like the filament of a really strong light bulb. Then the door opened wider, and I was out there in the black nothingness, floating free. Suddenly, I collided with one of the sails and rolled around under it until I hit one of the struts, and something made me grab hold of it. I hung there like a kind of mad Christmas decoration, and for a second, it was completely the most cosmic thing ever. The huge moon was in front of me, and my feet seemed to be dangling in a milky bath of stars. In a moment, I was going to turn myself round and see if I could see the Earth. Meanwhile, I was just enjoying how intense this was. The space between the stars was blacker than anything I'd ever seen, but everything that was shining, the sail, the moon, the stars, My metal cuffs were shining a million times brighter than anything you've ever seen shine. Even my yellow safety cord seemed to shine. I remember hanging there, watching it slither through my legs and snake off into space. I remember thinking, hey, I've got a safety cord. I can let go. And at the same time thinking, if one end is fastened to me, what's the other end fastened to? Oh, nothing. It was just drifting off into space. I had fastened myself to the cord, but I had not fastened myself to the module. All I can remember after that is my own hands gripping the struts, trying to hold on, my own hands shuffling painfully, slowly along the sail towards the module. I thought about going hand over hand like on a monkey bars, but I was too terrified to let go with one hand, even for a second. It seemed to take hours to get back to the side of the rocket. I was sweating and my heart was thumping, and by the time I was next to the rocket, my helmet was starting to steam up. And that's when I realized I wasn't really sure which way it was back to the hatch. I'd rolled over so many times under the sail that I couldn't remember now whether I came out the back or the front. I worked out that if the yellow cord was streaming past me, then it must be pointing in the opposite direction to the one I had come from. Also, I knew I couldn't see the moon from the hatch, so the hatch must be at the end furthest from the moon. Under the sail, there was a strut attaching itself to the module. I edged down to that and found the sill of the compartment the sails had been in before they popped out. I gripped it and followed it towards the back. It took ages. And by the time I got to the end, I was too tired to do anything except hang there, staring straight at a couple of rivets and a big metal panel. I knew the hatch must be nearby, but I couldn't see much by then because of the condensation in my helmet, and I was starting to worry about how much oxygen I would have left. I ran my hand over the panel until I came to the edge of it. There was a double row of rivets there, just wide enough for me to squeeze my fingers between so that I could hold on for a second. I brought my other hand over and squeezed that in too. Then I reached out to find the next panel, did the same. I was just clinging on literally by my fingertips the whole time, crawling along the outside of something that was moving 5 times faster than a train. I tried to find the hatch with my fingers, but suddenly my foot caught on something. It was stuck. I put my other foot round. Yes, 2 feet fitted inside. I ran one foot along the inside rim of whatever it was, then froze. The rim seemed to be quite sharp and metal. What if I ripped my suit? I stayed there for a while, trying not to breathe. I was sure now that it was the hatch below me. I just wasn't sure how to get the rest of myself down there. I tried crawling down with my hands, but keeping my feet tucked in. It only took me so far. I was going to have to try to jump down, but what if the moment I let go, I just shot off into space? I had no choice. I had to risk it. I let go of the side of the rocket and at the same time pushed my legs inside as hard as I could. In my mind, this would make me slide elegantly, feet first, back inside the hatch. But in fact, I banged my knees and the pain made me curl up into a little ball so that for a second or two I was floating completely free in space. But the momentum of curling up made me turn right over, and as I came round, I was passing the bottom of the hatch. I grabbed it and dragged myself inside. There was plenty to hold on to in there. I felt around blindly with my fingers and pushed a button. I could hear the airlock door closing behind me. I wasn't out of danger, but I was so happy to be back inside that I started to take my helmet off. I wasn't sure how to do it and fumbled around for a bit. And when I finally got it off, I could see again. And the first thing I saw was the hatch door clicking shut. If I'd known the proper way of undoing my helmet, I'd have got it off more quickly. The door would not have been closed, and my head would have exploded. Okay, I'm going to stop there. That's long enough for anybody to be listening to me. Thank you so much for your patience. Again, we will definitely get it right next week. Next week, I'm going to do something about storytelling. I'm going to tell a story. So look out for details on there. Write your own story, 15 minutes, heads down. Don't think about spelling. Don't think about structure. Just write. Have a great time. Thank you. Thank you again. And I'll see you next week. Oh, I've been told to say like and subscribe, because if you do that, then if it does go wrong again, it's easy to find me. So if you like and subscribe then to my YouTube channel, then when I go live, you'll get a little notification and it'll be easy to find me. So for your own for your own sanity, like and subscribe. Goodbye for now.